to the first live of the Felix Knit Along. If you are unfamiliar, I am going to be hosting a knit along for Amy Christoffers' really cute throw over pattern Felix. So we are going to bang this Felix out in May, but I wanted to pop up early. It is currently April, and talk about materials because there could be a lot of confusion about what materials are best for the sweater. So I wanted to go into it a little bit and then have you a couple, give you a couple weeks to be able to order what you need because, things are unpredictable. And it's very important to give yourself a couple of weeks to be able to get your yarn in. All right. So this sweater, Felix, is knit entirely in the round, which is why when you're swatching, you want to swatch in the round. So that's what I have here. And you can see on the front, it looks really nice. And on the back, it looks like a goddamn nightmare. And that is because we've got these long strands, because the way that you easily knit a swatch in the round, and I'm going to do it for you, is you only want to knit, because when you're knitting in the round, you're only knitting, you're not purling. So if you make your swatch knitting and purling, that's not an accurate representation of your knitting in this work. It does look really neat. I'm going to say that is the yarn. That's entirely the yarn. Usually these are huge nightmares. And when I lifted that up and looked at it in the camera, I was like, wow, that looks real good. Yeah, this is literally the best swatch that I've ever made. So you guys really know what I'm fucking talking about over here, because look at what a great knitter I am. This is an anomaly. But you're going to be able to see really well what I do to get this to knit in the round, because the camera is facing this way. All right. So what I'm going to do is kind of hold my hand here and pull this strand over. And that is going to allow me to go back into the next row of knitting from the right side, just like I have been. Leaving my hand here does allow a little bit more space. What happens a lot of times when you're knitting in the knitting swatches in the round, you start off super loose and it's easy, but then you get really bored with knitting a swatch, and then it tightens up, and then it makes you completely insane. It just makes you want to stop knitting your swatch. Yeah, relatable content? Of course it is. So I'm just knitting across this row. And when I get to the end, I am going to just slide it to the other end of my needle here. So I'm just going to get over, and then I'm ready to put my hand here. I'm pulling this over so that I can start working my next row. Okay, so that's a really great way to knit your swatch in the round. That'll give you a pretty accurate representation of your actual knitting in a sweater. All right. So once you have enough fabric to get an accurate read, you'll definitely want to block this. Now, I am a block on the needles girl because I don't like to waste my yarn. I might need this yarn. This yarn might need to go in my sweater. So I just leave it attached to my skein and give it a block and then put it on a spare needle just in case I need it for the rest of the pattern. But then if I need it for my sweater, then it's ready to go and I don't have to like splice it together or anything. All right. So I was looking at this yarn, and it requires a size 9, between the size 9 and 11 needle. That is comfortable for this particular yarn. And our pattern calls for a size 10 needle. So that's right in the middle. So I went up and got my size 10 needles, and that's what I made my swatch on. All right. So the most important thing when you're swatching is to get a fabric that you really love. All right. So when I was looking at my fabric, after I blocked it, of course, and I hit this with a little steamy iron. I didn't fully wet block this, and that's completely fine too. Who's got the time to wait for their swatch to block? I mean, come on. So I was able to kind of get a nice feel for my fabric, and I really like it. One thing, I think it was Joy, I saw the yarn is thick. The yarn is totally thick. And so you want to think about your comfort level too. If you are struggling to knit this yarn because it's so thick, your needle size is too small and you need to go up a needle size because you don't want to struggle and get a really, really dense fabric. That's not going to make a comfortable sweater, and it's not going to make a comfortable knitting experience for yourself. You definitely want to be comfortable when you're knitting it, and you want a fabric that is going to be more wearable. All right, so when I was looking at my size 10 needle swatch, I really liked it. It's not super dense. It has a little breathability, which is good, right? Especially in a bulky weight sweater. So I decided that I was going to go with my 10s. All right, upon measuring my swatch, I found that I'm getting about 3 stitches to the inch. Which means that when we're looking at the pattern, you know, patterns usually give it in 4-inch increments. That would be, quick math, 12 stitches for 4 inches, where the lovely Amy gives 14 stitches for 4 inches. All right, so my gauge is very off. So do I care about that? 100% no. All I care about is that I really like my fabric. All right. I am not going to try to go down a needle size because that fabric is going to be so dense on a size 9. I will not like it at all. Even if I hit gauge, I'm not going to like the pattern because I already really like my swatch on a size 10. So the thing that I need to do now is figure out, based on my gauge, what size I want to follow. Okay, so I was taking a look at this pattern and I was noticing that Miss Amy recommends an ease between 2 and 8 inches. So that's quite a range, right? So I kind of looked around at the finished pictures on Ravelry. There are quite a few of them, and I was really liking the sweaters that had quite a bit of ease. So I was going to kind of lean into that ease, and I want to end up with 8 inches of ease for my sweater. So I took a measuring tape and measured my bust size, and I added 8 inches to that bust measurement, and that made me get a sweater that I want to be about 44 inches around. Okay, so at that point I have to do a little bit of math. All right, if I'm getting 3 stitches to the inch and I want 44 inches for my bust, I'm going to multiply those numbers together to get how many stitches I'm going to end up with when I take my sleeves off my sweater. All right, this is a top-down sweater, which means we're casting on at the neck, we're increasing around, and those increases are going to include our body measurement and our sleeve measurement. Okay, so if I'm looking at my bust measurement, which is after I pull off the sleeves, of 44 inches, that is going to give me a stitch count that is going to be 132 body stitches. All right, so at that point, what I am hoping, right, because it's less work if you can find a size in the pattern that works for you, that there's a part in this pattern that kind of is close enough to 132 stitches where I can just follow that size to get a sweater that's going to work for my particular size requirements. All right, so I'm going to take this pattern and I'm going to keep scrolling down. I'm going to go past all of the yoke, all of the raglan instructions, and I'm going to end up at page 5 of 6, which is divide body and sleeves. All right, now at the bottom of that paragraph, I've got a list of numbers that is the total number of stitches on my needle after I pull off the sleeves. And luckily for me, the very smallest size that Amy wrote has a body circumference stitch count of 136 stitches. And that's pretty close to what I'm going for. So it's all right. The other thing I want to make sure is that the sleeves are going to fit me. All right. Because if you've ever taken a class with me, a lot of times if you find the bust measurement that you really want for your sweater, those sleeves get real heinous. All right. So I want to look in the pattern and find out how many stitches for the size that I've chosen that are going to be in the sleeve circumference, and just do that math as well. All right. So if we are scrolling through this pattern, we've got a total stitch count with the smallest size at being 40 stitches on the needles. All right. So if I do a little bit of math and I take 40 stitches and I divide that by 3, that's going to give me 13 1/3 inches for my upper arm, which I'm totally fine with. So what I'm going to end up doing is following the smallest size of the pattern, which is going to give me the perfect sizing for me. All right. So this is a totally normal thing you need to do in the process of finding a sweater size that works for you. Okay. So many times we just dive in and hope it works out. But we don't want to do that because this is a lot of work. Even though we're going to be knitting the sweater in a month, that's still a lot of work. That's a whole month's project. All right. So yeah, it works out well if you crunch a few numbers and get that to work out. And then you know exactly what's going to happen with your gauge. All right. Yeah. Laura says that her gauge is going to be off too. Yeah, I think it's really normal when you are dealing with yarn that's outside of the normal weight range, a normal weight range being, I think, fingering to worsted. Once you get outside of those, lace or smaller or Aran or larger, that's kind of all over the place. They can call anything anything, and there's like no accountability. So chunky, bulky, Aran, it all kind of lands in the same pile at the yarn store. So one man's chunky is another man's bulky. One man's Aran is another man's chunky. So digging into this and finding a fabric that you really like that works really well with the sweater that you intend for yourself is the #1 name of the game here. All right. So this math is stuff that we're going to be going over probably for the next month before we cast on this sweater in the first week of May. All right. So thinking about all of these things when you are shopping for your Felix yarn, hopefully you're more motivated rather than scared. This was definitely meant to say anything that you like is going to work out. I know a lot of you want to sub worsted weight yarn for this, which is completely fine, right? It's just going to take a little bit of math. So if you are looking at your gauge, a fabric that you really like for worsted weight yarn, that is not going to come on a size 10 needle. So right away, you always, when you're doing a size substitution, like a weight of yarn substitution, you want to knit with the needle that the yarn recommends, not try to fit your yarn into the needle that the pattern recommends. Okay, very important. All right, just a reminder that we do have a topic on the party that all of this is going to be under. It is the Bang Out of Felix Knit Along, so that you can definitely post pictures of your swatches, post your math, your number crunching up there for everybody to take a look at. The more wild your gauges, the more helpful that is for your brain to start learning this process of resizing your work. All right, very important. All right, well, that's about it for Felix. Hopefully everyone's just excited to participate. I think this is going to be super fun. All right. Royal found the only squeaker toy left in the house. Isn't that just exactly what happens when you're going live? The garbage truck goes by in the alley right by your window, and your dog finds the only squeaker toy left in the house for the first time in like months. Yeah, it's just what happens. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me live. As I will be answering questions under that topic on the party for the next month before we dig into this together the first week in May. So don't hesitate to pop in, share your swatches, share your math. It's going to be so awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much again. Ooh, I'm going to definitely not forget to copy this chat. All right, killing it. All right, everybody. Thanks so much again. Have a great day. Bye.